Hello, and welcome to episode 5 of the pharmaphorum podcast. My name's Dominic Tyre, and I'm pharmaphorum's creative director. For this episode, I met Blueberry Therapeutics CEO Dr. John Riddon at the Wellcome Collection in London to talk about the UK biotech he co-founded, its strategy, and bringing innovation to life through Blueberry's nanomedicine approach. We also discussed its focus on dermatology, a recent funding deal signed with China Medical Venture Investment, and the concept of risk management for a small biotech company. Now you can find more details of this episode, including a download link to the podcast and information about other instalments in the series at pharmaphorum.com/podcast. The podcast is also available on iTunes, where you can find and subscribe to it by searching for pharmaphorum. John, welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast.
Thank you.
I think perhaps if we could start off, if you could give us a potted history of how you come to now be CEO of Blueberry Therapeutics. I know it's at least a 20-year journey encompassing biotech and the pharmaceutical industry itself. But how did you get to be sitting here?
Well, after a DPhil in Oxford, looking into the sebaceous gland and skin, which is a gland involved in acne, I moved to Cancer Research UK at Lincoln's Inn Field and started turning my attention to signal transduction in cancer. Following that, joined a biotech and spent 2 years in a company in Cambridge called Ribonetics, looking at the use of ribozymes and antisense in dermatology and oncology, as it happened. And that was just fabulous. Got involved in all sorts of aspects of the business, from patent writing, commercial, research. And it was a real vibrant, energizing place to work until it ran out of money. And then I joined Pfizer in Kent, and that's where I really learned serious drug discovery and development, how it's done in a very lean way, a very professional way. So I spent 7 years at Pfizer in cardiovascular disease and tissue repair. Led some drug discovery programs there, which again was very exciting, met a fantastic range of people. And then moved to AstraZeneca, where I spent 12 years in early phase research and towards the end in late phase research, so translational sciences. And left there in 2012, having acquired some compound assets to develop at Blueberry. Really setting up Blueberry a few months before I left AstraZeneca. Little did I know they were going to close the site at that point. It was still a vibrant, happening site. But interestingly, once I'd set Blueberry up and co-founded Blueberry, spent a year and a half developing ideas, IP, project plans. We then got to the point where we needed laboratories. And as I was looking across the whole of the UK for laboratories, the message came out that there was going to be a science park at Alderley Park. So we reached out to Martin Mackay, who was head of research at the time, said, "Is this true?" He said, "Yes, it is." And so, long story short, we ended up being the first on-site with Blueberry Therapeutics, and we're our first labs, and we're still there.
So based at Alderley Park in Cheshire with AZ, and then still based at Alderley Park with Blueberry Therapeutics.
Yes.
And the assets you acquired, am I right in thinking they came also from AstraZeneca?
They did. They came from AstraZeneca. It was assets that block P38 alpha. So they were peptide-based in nature. Very interesting science, not working the way normal kinase inhibitors work. And we thought we could develop these as anti-inflammatories. So very exciting to have those assets and the support from AZ. But we couldn't get investment to really progress them. And that's when we changed tack to looking at both antibiotic resistance and dermatological disorders, and ended up building a portfolio of programs where essentially we were looking at reducing the risk of failure in these programs, and hence using generics reformulated to lower the dose, essentially.
And so we've got then Blueberry Therapeutics set up as a UK biotech. It's the company's progressing its first potential candidates through that time. I mean, what were your thoughts with the company in terms of what its overarching strategy should be?
Yeah, so the overarching strategy really was to as it developed to where we are today, was to create a company focused in dermatology, addressing very clear medical need, non-life-threatening diseases, but they are serious and they impact lots of people, with very clear commercial opportunities. So it was really creating a company that addressed these uncomfortable diseases and a large proportion of people that would allow us to do well commercially, and therefore allow us to then not only repay the investors that came in to support us, but also a bunch of us will invest in additional programs probably in antibiotic resistance later on. Mm-hmm. So the overall strategy was around building a derma company that has got huge commercial potential.
Mm-hmm. And specifically in terms of these large commercial diseases, so where were your focus areas there?
So a good question. We've really focused on, we did an analysis of pretty much all dermatological diseases and arrived at a number of them that really aren't well met at the moment by current technologies, current medicines. So onychomycosis, a fungal nail infection, it's a very, very common disease, and it's a disease of the aging population. The older you get, the more likely you are to get the disease. Very uncomfortable, unpleasant. It's just usually associated with tinea pedis, athlete's foot. So this is a big, big market. The current drugs, topical drugs, don't work particularly well, and you have to treat yourself for a year to find out that maybe most of the time it doesn't work. The oral drugs, which work very well, come with a number of safety problems, and so it's so how can you take these really good drugs with safety problems and make them great?
Mm-hmm. And how do you go about bringing innovation to these sorts of areas where there are treatments, but clearly they're not all doing what they should be?
Yeah.
How can you change things?
Well, really, it was taking a real studying the nail, studying the disease, really in some depth. And our CSO, Dave Cook, and myself in particular, spent a long time just really thinking about the disease and the structure of the nail, and arrived at a hypothesis, essentially, which is a number of publications out there that describe the more aqueously soluble your drug, the more likely it will be to get through the nail. Mm-hmm. We know that some of the best drugs out there, like terbinafine, don't dissolve very well at all in water. And so in fact, they don't penetrate through the nail very well as topicals. Whereas an oral drug, high dose, it solves the disease more often than it doesn't. So our hypothesis was, how do we get terbinafine into the aqueous phase, essentially? Mm-hmm. And we worked for some time on various formulations to try and move it into the aqueous phase, and then had some success with nanomedicine technology from a company called Takrea, based in London, which forms these nano capsules, if you like, in the nanometer range, mm-hmm. loaded up with drug, and then the drug therefore now sits into this aqueous phase and gets through the nail. And so that allows us to therefore get the drug, this really good drug, through the nail to the nail bed without having to take a really large 250 milligram tablet of the drug to get through systemic circulation, cause these safety problems like gut problems, liver problems, neurological problems. Just applying it directly, you reduce the dose 1,000-fold. So yeah.
So, and in terms then of the nanomedicine approach, that's so far been paying off. Your pipeline, your lead candidate is going into phase 2. Around phase 2 at the moment.
Yeah. So we've just completed a phase 1/2. So it's a safety, efficacy, PK study. We're excited about the results. It's not fully read out yet. We'll get the top line results end of this month. So we're quite excited about that. We're all going into multiple trials, if you like. The next one is a phase 2 where we're going to try to define the dose more precisely, I would say. So we're seeing the desired effects, but we're not sure we've got the right dose at the moment. So that's why we're going into a phase 2 and in parallel looking at a phase 3 in tinea pedis. So the portfolio is advancing quite nicely. The nanomedicine component of this is really as simple as reducing the dose whilst maintaining the efficacy. That's really what we're looking for.
Clearly then the funding round, Series B funding round,
yes.
you closed in August this year. So that's going to set you up well for some of these new trials that you'll be doing.
Yes, so that's designed to help us advance our programs through to the next value inflection point, which would be your classic phase 2 clinical proof of concept. Perhaps taking one of the other drugs through phase 3 development. We're still exploring that in some detail. Importantly, it was also hooking up with a good commercial partner for Asia as well. So CMS have proven that they are, a top pharma in Asia for dermatological disorders and infectious diseases, with a very good sort of distribution network and sales network, very good regulatory expertise. So we feel they're a really good match for us as an R&D organization hooking up with a highly commercial organization. We're excited to be working with them.
Clearly for any company, but particularly a newer, smaller biotech company, there's a lot of ground to cover.
Yes.
Out there in the wider world, trying to get your products to market. So the CMS deal, so that's going to cover, isn't it? The Greater China area.
That's right, and North Korea and South Korea and Mongolia. But we've retained rights for America, USA, South America, Europe, Japan, and are talking with a number of possible large pharma partners about those territories as we progress these compounds through clinical development, hopefully eventually to a new medicine.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of when the company was first set up in the years since then, I'd be interested to hear how you approach the concept of risk. When you look, we know all about big pharma companies' attrition rates through the different phases of R&D, but clearly they have backing up that resources and many other compounds coming through. But when you're talking about a small biotech company, each compound decision takes on so much more weight.
Yes.
How, when you were choosing which compounds to bring over from AZ, and when you're looking at newer compounds, how do you look to lower the risk inherent in this process?
So I learned a lot in the early days, I have to say, about risk management. Being a small company, you haven't got too many shots on goal. So the projects that you take on, we design them to be as low risk as possible. So that means we can't really leave questions open around the safety and the efficacy. We need to understand the safety and efficacy. So starting out, it wasn't really possible for us to work with a brand new compound. So we looked out there for compounds that are in existence or generic that work very well, so they're very effective, but they might have problems, whether that's a safety problem or delivery problem, formulation problem, that needed solving. So that's why we ended up with terbinafine, which is a really excellent drug, but it does have these safety and formulation problems. So those were things we can get our teeth into. So there, we're reducing the risk by, you no longer have a question about does the drug work or not. You've no longer got a question about what the safety problems are, because you know what they are. Even if there are a long list of them, you know what they are, and you know the reasons for it. So we felt reducing the risk at the start was important for us, working with knowns. And then we needed to be certain that we were approaching these programs very scientifically, so allowing the science to steer us. So we needed to be confident that when we do a killer experiment and we don't get the answer we want, that we'd be prepared to kill it, the program. Mm. Now, that'd be really tough if all you had was one program, and no matter, how much you try to just follow the science. So a way of dealing with that was to build a risk-balanced portfolio of 5 programs. So the first 4 really are all reformulations of existing drugs. And so we're working in acne, topical analgesia, and also atopic dermatitis, with tinea pedis and onychomycosis the most advanced. So it was building that risk balance portfolio meant that each time we tried to kill the onycho program, for example, no, we can't deliver through the nail, no matter what we've tried, then we would be prepared to kill the program and move on to acne or onto tinea pedis. So that's the reason for our portfolio. As it turned out, each time we did the killer experiment, we succeeded in answering it successfully and moving the program on to the next step, even stronger than before. And so, yeah, it is tough. I know that waiting for your clinical trial results to come out feels a bit like waiting for your GCSEs. but it's a rewarding process when you're truly following the science. It means you arrive in clinical development, experimenting in patients with your test formulations, your test drugs, on the back of really high quality science. Mm-hmm.
So finally, really, for this episode of the podcast, I'd be fascinated to hear a bit more about what the future holds for Blueberry Therapeutics. What's next for the company?
Well, what's next is, we're gearing up now to go into phase 2 clinical development in the US for onychomycosis, and we're also working with our new Asia partners, CMS, on tinea pedis, and looking to develop that further towards product. So those 2 are demanding a lot of our time at the moment, with the ambition of moving them into phase 3 and on to new drug approvals. But also there's a lot of demand now on our preclinical team, and that's all about now advancing formulations for acne and topical analgesia into nomination for development, and we're planning to do that mid next year. So if all goes well, we'll have 4 programs in clinical development by the end of next year. Mm-hmm. And in our mind, relatively low risk, and again, allowing the science to guide us, really.
Mm-hmm. Well, I certainly wish you well for everything you've got coming up over the next years ahead. John, thank you very much for joining me for the pharmaphorum podcast.
Thank you very much, Dominic.
And that's it for this episode of the pharmaphorum podcast. I hope you enjoyed my chat with Dr. John Ridden from Blueberry Therapeutics on its strategy and recent milestones. You can find more details of this episode, including a download link for the podcast and information on other installments in the series, at pharmaphorum.com/podcast. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on iTunes, where you can find and subscribe to it by searching for pharmaphorum. And don't forget to visit our website to sign up for daily or weekly email, pharmaceutical news and analysis bulletins. And follow us on Twitter, where we are at pharmaphorum. So that's it for the pharmaphorum podcast for 2018. We'll see you next year.